This isn't a bicycle pump, it's the Welrod, a weapon Major Hugh Reeves deliberately designed not to look like a gun. So why did SOE need a secret research factory to make weapons that could hide in plain sight? Look at the shape before the name. There's a long cylindrical body, a small rear fitting, and, when its detachable magazine is removed, no obvious pistol grip at all. Modern observers have often compared that stripped-down profile to a bicycle pump. No surviving SOE document appears to use the nickname, but the visual point holds. At a glance, it doesn't read like the familiar outline of a service pistol. That mattered because this was a weapon for a war in which recognition could be fatal before a shot was fired. The Imperial War Museums describes the Welrod as intended for short-range assassination, with a recommended operational range of 8 yards. 8 yards is the length of a modest front garden. At that distance, a concealed weapon had to be carried into position first. Its appearance, size, and noise signature were part of the mission requirement. The Welrod was built by a section of Britain's wartime Special Operations Executive, usually known by its initials, SOE. Formed on the 19th of July 1940, SOE existed to promote sabotage and subversion, and to assist resistance movements in enemy-occupied territory. Its agents operated behind lines, often travelling with forged papers, civilian clothing, clandestine radios, and equipment that couldn't always look like military equipment. A standard pistol announced itself immediately. A standard submachine gun did so from even farther away. Station 9 was one of the places created to solve that problem. It operated from the Fryth estate, described in records as near Welwyn or Welwyn Garden City in Hertfordshire, and it had previously used the cover name Inter-Services Research Bureau. Its purpose changed during the war. It began as a wireless research unit known as Special Signals, became involved in weapons development and production, and later functioned as a broader research and development station. That sequence tells us what Station 9 really was. It wasn't a single workshop making odd firearms. It was part of SOE's technical infrastructure, a place where engineers, scientists, military personnel, and skilled workers could take an operational problem and produce an object designed for it. Lieutenant Colonel John R.V. Dolphin commanded Station 9. Professor D.M. Newitt headed scientific research within SOE's wider technical structure. Their station dealt with far more than these 3 weapons, including signals, sabotage equipment, camouflage, and specialized transport. But the man who connects the Welrod, the sleeve gun, and parts of the Well gun story is Major Hugh Reeves. Reeves was an engineer attached to Station 9. He is credited with the Welrod and with the smaller concealed weapon now commonly called the Well wand. Earlier accounts sometimes attributed the Welrod to Major Dolphin or left its inventor unnamed. Later archival work gave Reeves the clearer credit. The names of the weapons also point back to the station. Many Station 9 projects carried the prefix WEL, generally understood as a reference to Welwyn or Welwyn Garden City. The connection is visible in names such as Welrod, Wellgun, Wellbike, Wellman, and Wellfreighter. It was a local prefix attached to equipment intended for secret work far from Hertfordshire. For the Welrod, the second half of the name is usually explained as rod, slang for a gun. So the name can be read as a small verbal map, Welwyn's gun. The object itself, though, was designed to avoid looking much like one. Station 9 didn't simply take an ordinary pistol and dress it up as a household object. Its tubular form answered several overlapping requirements. The cylindrical body accommodated an integral suppressor. The manually operated action avoided the additional movement and noise of a self-loading pistol. The detachable magazine doubled as the grip, so removing it left a less recognizable tube-like form that could be concealed more easily. Those requirements shaped the silhouette. The Welrod appears under several formal names in British and American records. Hand-firing device Mark I and hand-firing mechanism Mark I both occur in surviving documentation. The familiar name Welrod survived because it was shorter, stranger, and much easier to remember. Its variants have caused confusion ever since. The Welrod Mark II and Mark IIA were chambered for 32 ACP ammunition. The later Mark I used 9x19mm ammunition. The numbering looks backwards because wartime development didn't follow the neat sequence that later collectors might expect. During late 1942, SOE was assessing a .32 caliber version of the weapon. By March 1943, the design had been revised with an improved grip, replaceable magazine, spring ejector, reduced trigger pressure, and changes to the rear operating control. Those dimensions explain why the Welrod's appearance was so unlike a conventional pistol. A normal sidearm puts its grip below the action. The Welrod stretched its essential parts along a tube. Its silhouette was shaped by the need to carry a suppressor and a manually operated mechanism in one compact object. The detachable grip magazine intensified the effect. With it attached, the weapon was still visibly gun-like to anyone inspecting it closely. With it removed, the remaining body lost the feature people most immediately associate with a pistol: the hand grip. That distinction is important. Station 9 wasn't producing a perfect disguise that could fool every inspection. It was reducing the chances of immediate recognition and making concealment easier. In clandestine warfare, a few extra seconds of uncertainty could matter. The Welrod's suppressed design is equally easy to exaggerate. It's often described online as the quietest gun ever made, or assigned a single dramatic decibel figure, as though every example behaved identically. The available evidence doesn't support that kind of certainty. How quiet was it? The Welrod was built for suppressed, discreet use. That much is clear. Its manually operated action reduced the mechanical noise associated with a self-loading pistol, while its integral suppressor reduced the report of firing. But precise sound figures vary according to ammunition, condition, measurement distance, equipment, and test method. A wartime reading taken 10 feet away can't simply be treated as equivalent to a modern instrumented measurement taken under another protocol. The useful conclusion is less glamorous and more revealing. Station 9 was trying to reduce two forms of exposure at once: the sound expected from a firearm and the visual profile expected from a pistol. That was why the Welrod looked the way it did. Its intended role was lethal. Imperial War Museum's records identify it as a short-range assassination weapon. The National Army Museum includes an SOE Welrod in its collection of special weapons. Specialist histories place its purpose within the wider clandestine world of occupied Europe, resistance organizations, and covert operations. We don't need to attach it to unverified stories about named agents or celebrated missions. The museum description is enough. This was a weapon intended for close-range killing, made for circumstances in which ordinary firearms brought too much noise, too much bulk, and too much immediate recognition. Production totals remain disputed. The National Museum of the US Air Force states that the exact number manufactured is unknown, though it gives an estimate of approximately 2,800 pistols. The Australian War Memorial describes the total production run as under 2,800. Other accounts suggest much higher figures. The honest answer is that the exact total hasn't been securely settled. Yet even the lower estimate tells us something important. The Welrod wasn't merely a bench-made curiosity or a single proof-of-concept object. It was made in enough numbers to answer a real wartime requirement. That gap in the record is useful. It keeps us from turning the Welrod into a mythic assassin's gun attached to every famous clandestine killing of the war. What we can establish is narrower and stronger. Station 9 made a suppressed weapon for a specific short-range assassination role, and SOE considered it suitable for that purpose. The Welrod's shape now starts to make sense. Its long tube wasn't a designer's eccentricity. It contained the features needed for discreet carriage and discreet use. Its removable grip magazine weakened the normal pistol silhouette. Its manual operation and integral suppressor reduced the signatures that could expose its user. Station 9 had built a weapon around the fact that it might have to pass through a world where a firearm couldn't safely look or sound like a firearm. Major Reeves took that principle even further. The next object is slimmer than the Welrod and harder to recognize as a weapon, even when placed beside one. Modern writers often call it the well wand. The strongest wartime terminology is less whimsical: the sleeve gun. Imperial War Museum's records identify examples as Sleeve Gun Mark II. One museum description preserves the wording used in SOE literature. It was a short-length, silent murder weapon. That is SOE's language, not a modern dramatic label. The record also states that the weapon was carried concealed in the sleeve of a coat or jacket. That single detail explains its form better than any nickname. A conventional pistol needs a protruding grip. A protruding grip creates bulk. Bulk catches fabric, distorts clothing, and makes concealment more difficult. The sleeve gun removed that familiar shape and replaced it with a narrow tube suited to being hidden along an arm. Modern descriptions of the weapon call it wand-like because it resembles a short metal baton more than a handgun. That resemblance can sound almost comic until its intended location is understood. The form had to fit inside clothing. It had to remain hidden until the final moment. It had to be compact enough that the person carrying it could move without displaying a weapon-shaped outline. This was specialized disguise, not decoration. Reeves is credited with the sleeve gun as well as the Welrod. Technical histories describe it as a stripped-down, single-shot weapon related to the Welrod, but without the pistol grip magazine. The overlap is visible in its cylindrical body and suppressed purpose. The difference is equally visible. The Welrod still became a pistol when its magazine grip was attached. The sleeve gun was designed around concealment in a sleeve from the beginning. Its later nickname, well wand, follows the same naming logic as Welrod and well gun. Well connects it to Station 9's Welin association. Wand reflects the tube-like form, but well wand should be used carefully. The wartime records preserved by Imperial War Museums call it the sleeve gun. That distinction matters because it keeps the evidence clear. We can describe the object's visual resemblance to a wand. We can use the modern nickname. We shouldn't pretend that every wartime document used it. The sleeve gun's operational history is far less secure than its design purpose. Secondary accounts estimate that roughly 150 to 200 were manufactured, probably by Birmingham Small Arms Company. The surviving evidence does not establish widespread field use, named assassinations, or a broad program of issue across occupied Europe. That absence doesn't make the weapon irrelevant. It makes it more revealing as a design object. The Welrod was a weapon that could be broken down into a less recognizable shape for transport and concealment. The sleeve gun was a weapon designed to live inside clothing. Station 9 was solving the same broad problem at two different levels. One weapon reduced the visible identity of a pistol. The other reduced the need for a pistol-shaped form altogether. The difference between them shows how SOE's requirements could become intensely specific. A general infantry weapon needed to survive mud, carry enough ammunition, and function under battlefield conditions. A sleeve gun had another set of priorities: shape, concealment, proximity, and the ability to remain hidden on the body. The object wasn't intended for an exchange of fire. It was made for a narrow, lethal role that SOE described with startling directness in its own catalogue. That phrase, a short-length, silent, murder weapon, is the point at which the peculiar silhouette stops being amusing. The tube wasn't a magician's prop. It was the physical answer to a clandestine mission requirement. Station 9's work, however, wasn't limited to concealment. Its third weapon in this story looked far more conventional, but its failure to become standard equipment exposes a different problem. A useful design still had to survive trials, production, and official adoption. That weapon was the Welgun. The Welgun was a submachine gun project developed by SOE during 1942. A submachine gun is a compact automatic weapon firing pistol-caliber ammunition intended for short-range military use. Britain already had the Sten, inexpensive, widely manufactured, and one of the most recognisable British weapons of the Second World War. SOE's problem wasn't that the Sten didn't exist. The problem was whether it met SOE's particular needs. On 16th of May 1942, SOE considered whether a modified Sten Mark II could fulfill its requirement for a small 9mm machine carbine. SOE waited for a response. When progress didn't come quickly, Station 9 moved ahead with a design of its own. The Imperial War Museums puts the purpose carefully. Its Welgun record states that the weapon was designed during 1942 by the British Special Operations Executive, which sought to create a submachine gun more suitable for their purposes. That phrase is important because it avoids a lazy conclusion. The Welgun was intended as an alternative for SOE. It wasn't automatically superior to the Sten in every environment, and it was never formally adopted as the Sten's replacement. The early Welgun was built by Station 9's engineering section. By October 1942, 6 examples had reportedly been produced for demonstration to the Central Inspectorate of Small Arms, or CISA. Birmingham Small Arms examined the design and considered the cost of possible production. 60,000 is the scale at which a prototype becomes a national production issue. A factory would need material, machine time, inspection systems, trained workers, supply contracts, and official approval. It would be competing against every other urgent wartime demand. By December 1942, the Welgun had passed CISA tests, according to the surviving technical account. 6 more were being prepared for final trials. On the 1st of January 1943, SOE's chief wrote directly to the Minister of Production about the Welgun as an alternative to the Sten. The proposal sought production, with Birmingham Small Arms able to begin deliveries in April if authority was granted. The minister didn't simply sign off. His reply noted that the weapon was still undergoing required proof testing and that approval couldn't be granted until the pre-production models had completed it successfully. That response captures the institutional problem in a single exchange. Station 9 could produce an inventive weapon and impress evaluators. It couldn't bypass the system that decided whether the weapon would be manufactured on a national scale. The Welgun then reached its crucial comparison with the Sten. Early in 1943, 3 Welguns faced 3 Sten Mark IVs in Ordnance Board trials at Pendine in South Wales. The results were mixed. The Welgun performed better in accuracy, control, and rapid operation. The Sten performed better in Arctic conditions and in mud and sand tests. One point can sound trivial. The categories behind it weren't. A weapon intended for military issue had to function beyond a clean range. It had to survive poor weather, rough handling, contamination, transport, and hurried maintenance. It had to work for people who had never seen the design process and might need it after days of hard movement in filthy conditions. The Welgun's strengths were real. It was more accurate in the reported trials. It was judged better in control. Its balance and forward hand grip impressed evaluators enough that those features were recommended for use on the Sten and other folding stock machine carbines. Station 9 had created a design from which the existing system could learn. Its weaknesses were real as well. The Sten did better in the mud, sand, and Arctic tests. The Ordnance Board believed the Welgun's adverse condition performance might be improved by increasing the clearances between moving parts. That suggests a correctable technical issue, but wartime procurement decisions weren't made on potential alone. The weapon had to be ready when the system needed it. Further trials at Bisley gave the Welgun marks comparable to the Sten. Royal Navy and Royal Marine personnel also examined examples. A report from Whale Island described extensive testing and deliberate abuse, after which a Welgun continued to work well. Commander Young reportedly found one example exceptionally accurate on the range. Interest persisted. Formal adoption didn't. The Welgun never entered mass production. It wasn't adopted for standard issue. The surviving record does not provide one definitive explanation that settles the matter. A technical history says the cheaper Sten Mark IV was adopted instead. The same source acknowledges that the full reasons aren't revealed in surviving documents. Other accounts point to the Sten's better results in mud, sand, and cold weather testing, and to the development of compact Sten variants already moving through the system. The evidence supports a mixed conclusion. The WEL gun wasn't an ignored miracle weapon defeated by blind bureaucracy. It performed well in accuracy, control, and rapid operation, but it also performed less well than the Sten under mud, sand, and Arctic conditions. It reached the point of serious factory estimates and official trials, then failed to secure formal adoption. That is a much more interesting story than a simple tale of genius dismissed by convention. The WEL gun also corrects another easy assumption about the Sten. Britain's wartime economy didn't mean every cheap weapon was easy to make by hand, or that every alternative could be judged only by its manufacturing price. The question was military suitability at scale. Reliability, testing, output, supply, standardization, and the ability to arm large numbers of people without introducing a new burden into a wartime system. Station 9 could design for SOE's requirements. Adoption required other institutions to agree that the design was worth producing in quantity. Only very low numbers of WEL guns appear to have been built. Estimates usually place the total in the low double digits, perhaps 6 pre-production examples and perhaps roughly 12 prototypes overall. The available evidence does not securely establish broad SOE use in Europe. That makes the WEL gun the opposite of the Welrod in one crucial sense. The Welrod became a production weapon for a specific clandestine purpose. The WEL gun became a serious prototype, tested against the Sten, studied by possible manufacturers, and left outside formal adoption. Its story is still part of Station 9's achievement because it shows what the station was built to do. It could make an unusual concealed pistol. It could make a sleeve weapon for an exceptionally narrow role. It could also challenge a conventional military weapon with an alternative design. Each object answered a different constraint. The Welrod addressed the problem of carrying a weapon without immediately advertising it as a pistol. Its long, cylindrical body combined suppression, manual operation, and a detachable grip magazine. The result was a weapon that could become far less recognizable when broken down for concealment. The sleeve gun, often called the Welwand today, drove that logic into clothing itself. SOE's own catalogue language identified it as a short-length, silent murder weapon, concealed in the sleeve of a coat or jacket. Its wand-like form followed from where it had to be hidden. The WEL gun addressed a more conventional military problem. SOE wanted a submachine gun more suitable for its requirements than the available options. Station 9 produced a serious contender. Trials found advantages in accuracy and control, but the Sten held an edge in mud, sand, and Arctic conditions. The WEL gun wasn't formally adopted. Together, the three names become a guide to Station 9's purpose. Welrod, conceal the weapon. Welwand, tailor concealment to a specialized lethal role. WEL gun, improve a standard weapon, then discover that technical promise alone does not guarantee acceptance. The strange outlines now make sense. The bicycle pump silhouette was a consequence of a weapon designed to be carried discreetly, suppress its report, and avoid the obvious visual language of a pistol. The wand-like tube was shaped for a sleeve, not a parade ground. The conventional-looking WEL gun reveals the final limitation. Solving a problem in a workshop was only the beginning. The design still had to survive trial conditions, factory calculations, and the judgment of the wartime system. Station 9's weapons were practical answers to the distinct demands of clandestine war.